Alright everybody, welcome back. I know it has been a bit, but today we are going to be covering the NBA 2021 trade deadline. So a lot happened today, and we're just going to go through, and what I'm going to do is discuss each trade that happened and the order that they happened. So like starting earliest of the day, ending at the trade deadline when all the moves were done. Although some were finalized after the deadline, but those will be last. And I'm going to talk about who I think won each trade, and I'm going to say who won in the short run and in the long run. So like who won right now and who I think will probably end up winning when we look at this trade later on down the line, should things stay the same as they are. That probably won't happen. More trades will happen as the years goes on. That's how we're going to do it. And at the end, I'm also going to talk about some of the bigger names that were going to be traded that ended up not getting traded. But without further ado, we will get into the first trade. So the first trade that went down, at least on the trade deadline, was the Pistons trade Delon Wright to the Kings for Corey Joseph and a few picks. So what actually happened, like the specifics, Detroit got Corey Joseph, a Lakers 2021 second round, and they got their 2024 second round pick back. And then Sacramento ended up with just Delon Wright. So this is one of the simpler trades that happened. I don't think this one is a super blockbuster. It's not going to make much of a difference in the league. But I would say that the Pistons won. They get veteran influence with Corey Joseph. Pretty good for the young Pistons team that they have. And they also get 2 picks, whereas Sacramento gets Delon Wright, who's not terrible, but he's just not really great right now. And I think in both the short run and the long run, the Pistons will come out better from this trade. For the first trade, Delon Wright to Sacramento, Corey Joseph to Detroit. Detroit wins. Trade number 2, this is a bigger trade. We have Javale McGee getting traded to Denver. So the specifics, just Javale McGee goes to Denver, and then Cleveland gets Isaiah Hartenstein, a 2023 second-round pick, and an unprotected 2027 second-round pick. So some big future picks there. Overall, I think in the short run, Denver won this trade. Javale will be a great backup for Jokic, especially with how physical he plays, and he will help them coming in the playoff run against some of those tough Western centers that Jokic doesn't quite match up against as well when it comes to defensively. In the long run, though, I think Cleveland definitely wins. They get extra picks for the future development, and Hartenstein is 22, where JaVale is 33. So they can develop Hartenstein and hopefully make him a really good big man, where JaVale will probably retire soon. So this is more of a we want to win now move by Denver, but I like it, and I think in the short run they come out on top. Trade number 3, this is a big one. Chicago gets Nikola Vucevic. So what actually happened, the specifics, Chicago gained Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu, whereas Orlando got Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter, and 2 first-round picks. So personally, I think this is one of the first moves that certified Orlando is in a rebuild mode. Wendell Carter Jr. has been very disappointing this season, and Otto Porter doesn't really have much of an upside at this point either. The best part of this trade for Orlando is getting the 2 picks. I don't think they're going to be able to develop Carter and Porter very well, but Chicago gets to put Vucevic in a lineup with players like Zach LaVine, Lauri Markkanen, and Thaddeus Young, and that makes for a pretty good offensive team. I don't think this makes Chicago a contender, but I think this definitely puts them in the playoffs. Each team, I think, does gain what they wanted, so you can say that they both win. Chicago improved depth-wise with Vucevic, and they got some veteran leadership with Al-Farouq Aminu. Orlando got 2 mediocre players, but they did get 2 first-round picks that will really help with their rebuilding. So in the long run, I'm going to give this one to Orlando. In the short run, I'll give it to Chicago, and we'll see how it goes. Trade number 4, more of Orlando's rebuilding. We got Evan Fournier to Boston. So all Boston got was Evan Fournier. All Orlando got was 2 second-round picks. I think both teams come out fine in this trade. I just think the Celtics prioritized the wrong magic star. Celtics got a sharpshooter, which definitely adds depth to their team, and he should be good for chemistry. And the Magic get 2 picks to continue their rebuild efforts, and they clear up some cap space by shipping Fournier out. I personally think Boston should have tried to get Vucevic over Fournier, as they're in more need of a real big man than a sharpshooter. Nonetheless, the trade makes decent enough sense for both teams, and I see it as a win-win. Definitely Boston winning in the short run, though, as Orlando didn't even gain a player, and Orlando has much more potential to win this one in the long run. So we'll see how it goes. Nice move. I like it. Just don't think Boston prioritized what they needed to. The last big move for Orlando was trade number 5, where we have Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets. Denver gains Aaron Gordon and Gary Clark. Orlando gains Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick. This is probably the best trade that Orlando did. They got a lot more out of it than their other 2 trades. Denver made a huge move here as well, though. Denver added a lot of depth with Aaron Gordon, right? He'll be a great defensive threat, who just like Javale can really aid them in that current playoff push. And not only that, Gordon is definitely a good scorer when he wants to be, and he can take off some of the offensive weight that Jokic and Murray have to carry every game. For Orlando, they got another first-round pick. That's great. They also got R.J. Hampton, who will be a good star for them to develop. Gary Harris isn't amazing, and he isn't quite as young, being 26. He is good for a rebuild. Kind of young guy who's averaging about 10 points a game when he was healthy, which isn't bad. Denver easily takes this in the short run, and maybe even the long run, depending on how Gordon does there and how long he stays. But Orlando has a good chance at taking this one in the long run, depending on how they develop Hampton, Harris, and use that pick. So moving away from Orlando and heading down to Miami, we have trade number 6, Nemanja Bjelica to the Heat. So Miami gained Nemanja Bjelica, and Sacramento gained Mo Harkless and Chris Silva. So I think this is a very nice trade for Miami that will probably go under the radar for most people. They get a great shooter to add to their roster of snipers, and although it would have been good for Miami to develop Silva, as the Kings don't seem to be good at developing people, they come out better by snagging Bjelica. Sacramento got 2 okay big men. I just don't trust their player development to say that they win this trade at all. I believe Miami robbed Sacramento here. Not to say Mo Harkless and Chris Silva are bad, but I don't see as much upside for them on the Kings as I do with Bjelica and the Heat. Right, so in the short run, the Heat have Bjelica now, and in the long run, hopefully he'll stay. And they got a great shooter on their team. For Sacramento, they have 2 big men that I don't think they'll develop well. Look at Marvin Bagley. They just don't do well developing players. They did go with De'Aaron Fox, but I don't trust them enough to say that they win this trade in any way. Moving to trade number 7, we go up to Toronto. We have Norman Powell to Portland. Portland gained just Norman Powell, and Toronto gained Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. I hate to see Powell leave Toronto, but I do think it's for the best. Powell has had a breakout season in Toronto this year once he became a starter, and I think he will keep being an offensive threat in Portland. His efficiency will be a great strength alongside people like Damian Lillard. He's shooting 46.5 from 3, and his true shooting percentage is 68.5. So he's really good. Rodney Hood will get a good chance to bounce back in Toronto around Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam. He has a chance to be what Powell was for them given the right circumstances, and so he could be a good offensive player for them. The Raptors are pretty good at player development too, so I think they're a great fit for Gary Trent Jr. They should be able to develop him into almost an all-star, if not an all-star. I do think Portland wins in the short run with the way Powell's playing this year. They get the bigger push, and the Raptors have to take time to develop Trent Jr. and see how Hood fits in their system. So I think there's definitely a better chance that they do win in the long run. Just depends on how they develop Gary Trent Jr. But right now, I'm definitely giving the short run to Portland. All right, now we go to trade number 8. So Philadelphia, the Sixers gain George Hill, the Knicks gain Terrence Ferguson, and Oklahoma City gets Austin Rivers, Tony Bradley, and 2 second-round picks. The Thunder are the current definition of a rebuilding team. With this trade, the only 3-team trade at this deadline, they gained enough picks to have 34 picks over the next 7 years, 17 in each round. They also acquired Tony Bradley and Austin Rivers, of course. They don't really add a lot to the Thunder except maybe veteran presence, but they can be helpful rebuilding. They can flip Rivers or Bradley to try to get a little bit more out of it. The Sixers come out the best here by gaining George Hill. He's a highly efficient true point guard. That's exactly what they needed, and it'll work out for them since they couldn't land Kyle Lowry. And the Knicks gained another young star in Terrence Ferguson. I think they've been pretty good at developing young talent recently. And the Knicks have definitely been really good this year. Big surprise. So I think Terrence Ferguson's a nice fit for them. But I'm going to say that the Thunder win this in the long run. They gain another pick, and they gain 2 guys who can essentially just be flopped for some picks. For the short run, I'm going to say the Sixers with gaining George Hill, and the Knicks kind of land in the middle. Good trade, though. I like it for all 3 teams involved. They can make sense. And I'm excited to see George Hill on the Sixers, and I probably won't really notice Austin Rivers or Tony Bradley in Oklahoma City. Poor Shea. Please save him. Trade number 9. Rondo to the Clippers for Lou Williams, 2 future second-round picks, and cash compensation. It took me a while to judge this trade and figure out what I really thought about it. But after some thought, I think the Hawks finessed the Clippers. Right? And I'm not saying Rondo's bad. Rondo is a great point guard who definitely makes a difference on a championship run. But I don't trust the Clippers. It's not Rondo. So on the other hand, the Hawks get some great bench depth with Lou Williams, along with cash compensation and 2 picks. Either way, the Hawks win in the long run. With the picks and compensation, Rondo probably won't play much longer. Lou also may not play much longer either. They're both kind of older point guards. But with the Hawks getting those picks and that compensation, it gives them the long run win pretty easily to me. Rondo does, however, bring the Clippers exactly what they need, which was a true point guard with exceptional passing ability. He's probably the best passer in the league right now, and you could maybe argue all time. Overall, the impact of this trade depends on how reliable Kawhi and PG-13 will be in the postseason. If they do what they did last year against Denver, I don't see Rondo being the it factor for them. And that's what I mean by that I trust Rondo, but not the Clippers, right? Rondo can do all the good passing he wants, but if the other two stars fall apart again, then it doesn't really matter if Rondo's there. He's not enough to win a championship at this point in his career. I think good chance that the Clippers win this in the short run, depending on how their stars do in the postseason. But Atlanta has a good chance to win this in the short run as well. Atlanta definitely wins in the long run, though. Trade number 10. We have Miami getting Victor Oladipo. So the specifics, Miami gets Victor Oladipo. Houston gains Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and 2022 swap rights for one of the Nets picks. Personally, I think the Rockets have crumbled. All they got for James Harden was Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, about 9 picks, and I think Dante Exum is still there. And so that includes that big 3-team trade that put Harden over there. When they swapped around other players, all that they have left now is that technically came from Harden. You know, Victor Oladipo gets flipped, so that's technically from Harden. Is Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Dante Exum, and 9 picks. That's very good for a rebuild, but as of now, they have crashed. So they've definitely lost in the short run. Meanwhile, the Heat get a decently reliable playmaker who is a threat on defense as well. Oladipo now is not Oladipo pre-injury, but maybe Miami is the system that will change that. Right? In Indiana, when he came back from an injury, he wasn't the same. He got flipped to Houston, he wasn't the same. So maybe Miami is what he needs, but he has been good. He was averaging about 21 points. He just has bad efficiency right now. Bradley and Olynyk are definitely not what the Rockets needed to escape the hole that they're in. And now I think that John Wall is in a worse situation than he was in Washington. Right? In Washington, he at least had Bradley Beal for a good bit of the time. And then when he got to Houston, he had Harden and for like a tiny bit of time. Then he got Oladipo. He's got Christian Wood now, but I don't think that's as good of a star as Bradley Beal. And John Wall is in a worse hole than he was before leaving Washington. So sucks for him. But the Heat win this in the short run. I think they could definitely win this in the long run too, considering the Rockets front office doesn't seem to handle things very well, like ever. All right, and that brings us to our final trade number 11. Dallas gets J.J. Reddick and Nikola Melli, and New Orleans gains James Johnson, Dallas's 2021 second rounder, and some cash compensation. This was another trade that I had a little bit of trouble finding a winner with. After thinking about it, I got it. I think New Orleans is the winner, at least in the long run. They receive a pick and some cash compensation, which can help with some other moves in the future. Nikola Melli is not something I think will be missed by New Orleans. The 30-year-old power forward / center averages about 2 points, 1 assist, and 2 rebounds this season on 11 minutes per game. J.J. Redick's sharp shooting will be missed, but the Pelicans do have some shooters to make up for it. Lonzo has recently found his shot pretty well, and Brandon Ingram can shoot okay enough. So I don't think J.J. Redick will be missed too bad. They also gained the gritty toughness of James Johnson to back up Steven Adams and Jackson Hayes should they choose to give the veteran big man any minutes. And with Steven Adams and James Johnson, there's definitely a level of toughness in both their centers that other teams aren't going to be able to match as much. For Dallas, I think J.J. Redick's shooting will be much appreciated, but I don't think they gain as much as New Orleans in the grand scheme of things, because Reddick has been on a slump this season, so has Nikola Melli. Should Reddick bounce back to his usual status, the Mavericks will definitely seem to be the bigger winners here, like immediately, because he's going to really help boost that Mavericks team. I mean, they're putting more shooting around Luka Doncic. That's really good. If Nikola Melli also improves and gets higher than his career averages, which are about 5 points and 5 rebounds instead of 2, that'll be good for Dallas. I just don't see that happening. So I think for now that the Pelicans edge this trade in both ways, short run and long run. Just depends on how J.J. Redick fits in with Dallas. So that was all the trades, and now we're going to talk about just a few points that did not end up happening. So Kyle Lowry was a big name that was going to be traded around. Philly was looking at him. The Lakers were looking at him. But he ends up staying in Toronto. The Raptors have been disappointing this season, but perhaps their moves earlier with Portland can help them escape the slump, and Lowry can continue to be the great point guard that he is for them. It would have been sad to see him leave Toronto, so I'm kind of happy that he stayed, but I also don't want him to fall apart as Toronto falls apart. Next name that was kind of thrown around a lot was Lonzo Ball. He was included in, I know the Clippers wanted him. I think Philly was looking at him at a certain point, but he stays in New Orleans, and I think that's great for New Orleans. Lonzo has been improving nicely. He's got a good basketball IQ. Magic Johnson said he had the best the other day. Don't think so, because Paul and Rondo definitely have better basketball IQ than Lonzo. But Lonzo's found his shot. He's comfortable. He's been averaging pretty good points this season, good assist numbers as well. And I think he's just what the Pelicans need to keep developing around people like Zion, Brandon Ingram, Jackson Hayes, stuff like that. I think they really fit together. And then this one's not a player, the last thing I want to talk about, but I think most notable is that the Lakers were included in a lot of trade talks. They wanted to get Drummond, who they could still get in a buyout, but they were looking to trade for Drummond, I think. They were looking to trade for Lowry. And I know they popped up in a few other trade talks, but they end up not doing anything at all. People were asking for players they didn't want to get rid of. I think the Raptors asked them for Taylor Horton-Tucker. They were not willing to trade him. They were willing to move Dennis Schroeder and a few other people, but nothing came to fruition. So the Lakers end up being one of the bigger names to fail to make a move this year. The Bucks as well. I am a Bucks fan. We got PJ Tucker a few days before the deadline, but other than that, we didn't really do any big moves. So there's definitely some contenders that may need an extra piece or so that did not really make a splash here on the deadline. So we'll see how that works out for them. But thank you for coming to my breakdown of the NBA 2021 trade deadline. I hope you enjoyed. We will see if I'm right about all my long run and short run predictions. So thank you. See you guys next time.